Last year, our annual meeting focused on the emotional and mental well-being of students. This year, we're addressing the well-being and their physical concerns. Obviously, unfortunately, and tragically, this has been brought to the forefront by events in Florida and some other isolated instances in schools throughout the country. Our first presenter is Captain Borek of the State Police. The captain oversees the School Safety Commission that Governor Raimondo has put together. Obviously, it's a great concern to all of us. There's legislation currently making its way through the General Assembly that would require districts to maintain and update their school safety reports on a more regular and consistent basis. And that's the kind of the point of today's session and speakers. Captain Borek is a 23-year veteran of the State Police. He has previously been the officer in charge of the State Training Academy, patrol commander for the Situate Barracks. He's formerly served as on the tactical commander of the tactical team, and most recently as a patrol commander. Captain Borek has a Bachelor of Arts degree in business psychology and a master's degree in administration from Salve Regina University. Captain Borek, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Just a little further background is most of my career has been with the tactical team and training, and I've been part of the School Safety Committee since the onset, going back to 2004. So something that's dear to me, that I truly believe that we could be a leader in our country, is school safety. I've been working on this mission for quite a long time. I've presented all over parts of the United States, throughout New England, whether it's school shootings, workplace violence, or most recently with the churches. Churches have been reaching out to me, and I've been probably presenting once a week at the churches. So there is a lot that we can do to ensure the safety of our schools. You see in your handout, which I saw this morning, you have your emergency action plans that are there. That was done several years ago in partnership with Rhode Island EMA. In fact, I won't take the credit for it because Stephen Kernard from Emergency Management did a fabulous job of putting that together. And obviously with a few other of us, we made that so every school district has emergency action plans. So essentially, you just have to cut and paste and make that your plans in your school. But more importantly, you have to ensure that everyone is aware of those plans. Now, we all talk about Columbine was the first major school incident we had in the United States. Columbine had unbelievable school safety plans. But the problem is, no one knew what the plans were. Nobody worked together. So the police, the fire, the emergency management, the school system, no one knew what each other had to do. So we need to work together to ensure that we're all on the same page, and God forbid we have a critical incident in one of our schools, we know how to react to it. So a few years later, probably about a year later, they asked me to put together an assessment of schools. So I put this with some help, some other partners, and put this together so schools could do an assessment of their own schools. Now, this wasn't about me or other people coming out to your schools. And my train of thought was, why are we going to spend money to have companies come to our schools when we can do it ourselves and utilize the funding that we would have utilized for a company to come to our schools, use that funding to make our schools safer? And I'll talk about different things that we can do to make our schools safer. But what we wanted to do is every school district have a school safety team that's in law today, who should be on that school safety team, and work together to do your assessments. Now, like Tim said, we are working this year in legislative that we are finally going to be a formalized group, our school safety committee. Also in that law, we are requiring that every school district send in their all hazard site survey assessment to the Rhode Island School Safety team. And our job is to look at those and offer any additional assistance that we may give. What do I mean? Well, let's say they weren't done that well, or we see some major flaws, then we will offer our assistance. We have some fabulous people on the School Safety Committee, people from Department of Education, Superintendent's Association, State Fire Marshal's Office, Buddha, Behavioral Health, and it goes on and on. So our goal is, if a district is lacking in something, then we will gladly come out and assist you any way we can. And I'm always available. I'll give you my information here at the end, and quite frankly, I have school districts reaching out to me on a weekly basis, which is fine. The way I've looked at it, I've dedicated most of my career to school safety, and I will continue until the day I have to retire. So that's a few more years to go. But my job is to ensure that this continues to go on. I've said this to the governor. I've said it publicly. Some of you may have heard me speak before, whether it's in the media or different events, is that I truly feel that we can be the leader in the United States in school safety. Two reasons. We have a lot of dedicated people in our state, and the second reason is because, quite frankly, we're small. We're small, and we need to get all on the same page with the safety of our schools. So the purpose of the assessment is to take what is identified and gather all that information and to ensure we have the safeguards in place in the event of a hazardous situation. Now, we think of our assessments, we always think of an active shooter. That's not what the assessment is strictly about. The assessment is about things that people don't think about. We are fortunate and unfortunate in a way. We have some crazy weather here in the state of Rhode Island. We're fortunate we don't get tornadoes, but we get severe thunderstorms. We have blizzards, stuff of that nature. But something we don't think about, look where a lot of our schools are. Close to highways, close to major roads. If you had a tractor-trailer truck roll over and start emitting chlorine gas or some dangerous gas, have we ever thought about how we'd handle that situation and what we do? So this assessment looks at things like that, things that any type of hazardous situation we may be in, how do we handle it? Now, we know that the last year or so, more so last year, we had a lot of bomb threats in our schools. Fortunately, that was something that will always happen, but the major event that was going through the United States, we were able to determine who that individual was. We made some arrests on that, so as of right now, things have kind of quieted down on that. So we want to take our assessment and we want to incorporate that into our comprehensive safety plan. Now, when I did the assessment, I put it together. If you look at it, and it's on the RIDE website, and I'm going to show you some of it here today, it's very, very basic. It's basic in the sense that you don't have to go to a 40-hour training, 80-hour training to do the assessment. It's simple. Now, by law today, you have to check the box off, the school departments have to check the box off to ensure that you did your school safety assessment. Now, you could just check the box and just go through the motions and not really utilize it in a very proficient and safe way to make things safer in our communities. So what I ask, and we'll talk about as I go forward here, is that we put a good effort into this. And the ones that we have, so I'll tell you right now, so far, we've asked in the last year or so, we've asked school districts to send this to us. We've only gotten about 17 school districts so far, which is kind of a little bit disappointing because we've really been out there. You know, I want to recognize, and I know Larry will be up here, Larry Filippelli from Situate Schools, and he'll be up here in a little bit. He represents the School Superintendent Association. He has been a valuable asset to our safety committee. He's always has his ear to the wall, finding out what's going on, what needs to be done out there. We talk on a weekly basis of how we can improve things. So getting back to the assessment, it's not about just checking the boxes off and saying, I did it. It's about looking at the little things that we can improve in our schools. Now, I've reviewed a lot of the school safety plans. I've met with some of your superintendents. And when I sit down and I meet with them and I go over their school safety assessments, a couple of times they've come to me and said, that's it? This is not going to cost me $250,000, $500,000? And the answer is no, because we don't have $250,000, we don't have $500,000, right? We don't have all this money. So it's the little things that we can incorporate, little things that we can do in our schools to ensure the safety. So why do we conduct these assessments? Well, it is the law. Soon there'll be another law that they have to be handed into the school safety committee. We want to promote student safety. We want to identify and manage any safety and security risks that we may have. And you're probably wondering, what is a safety risk? A simple safety risk in our schools, if you have bushes that are close to your schools, or you have trees that overhang your schools, right? Those are access to roofs. Those are areas where kids can hide weapons, bombs, whatever you can think. Now, if you've seen my presentation, my second slide on my presentation I always give for school safety is, it's a cartoon that says, "It can't happen here, USA." Because we have to be ahead of this. Most of us think, well, this can never happen here in Rhode Island, right? I hope it doesn't. Will it happen in Rhode Island someday? It will. So we have to be prepared for when it happens. So think about this, a tree that's over your school. That's access for a child, a kid, to climb onto that roof. And there is some good intelligence out there that I just received going probably back 2 months ago. It was right before Parkland, is that there were students who were planning in a part of the country to pull the fire alarm. We can talk briefly about that. And they were going to go on top of the roof, because there was access, and they were going to shoot students coming out of the schools. So there are individuals out there that are always planning to do stuff. We know Adam Lanzi, and you'll hear people from Sandy Hook, Newtown today. We know that Adam Lanzi wanted to be the winner in the United States with the most kills in a school. We know that because the Connecticut State Police was able to identify that he was communicating with people overseas. So there are other individuals out there, as sick as it sounds, that want the most fatalities in our schools, okay? And it will continue, the kids will continue, so we have to get on top of it. We have to help minimize the liability of our lawsuits, so we have to do something. There is actually law that came out, I want to say maybe 2 years ago now, in Colorado schools that they were held liable for an attack. They were held liable because their school system in this particular district did absolutely nothing. So us as a school safety committee are really not asking you to do a lot. 2 things we're asking you to do. Have your emergency action plans in place, which a lot of you are familiar with, and do your school safety assessments. Now, the question I get quite often is, what if the media gets a hold of those? Well, it's protected. We ensured, the state police, in fact, ensured that that is all protected from APRA, sunset laws, and stuff to that. So it is not accessible. It will never be released to anyone. It can't be. It's a law. We wanted to ensure that that doesn't get out there, whether it's your district or another district, what those school safety plans are and what are our vulnerabilities in our assessment. So that will never get out there. It should never get out there. And, you know, I've actually had people call me saying that some school safety school committees wanted to publicly put that information out there. Quite frankly, that should never go out there. For an example, you might have saw, I oversee the SWAT team. We did a raid yesterday morning in Pawtucket. You might have seen it on the news. Should we put that out there to the public that, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do? Absolutely not. It's the safety of everyone. Nor would we ever put that information out there. Things we have to consider, fire safety. I'll talk briefly about fire alarms. Now, we know that in Parkland, that individual pulled the fire alarm. I've been saying that for years, if you heard me, that if I were the bad guy, what would I do? I pulled the fire alarm for 2 reasons. The first reason everyone thinks is an evacuation. The second reason is because we know how loud it is and how it's difficult to communicate. So people have asked me, what do we do with the fire alarms? And I use this as an example. And I'm sure this has happened 1 or 2 times in your lifetime. You've gone to a hotel for a weekend, for a long weekend, whatever it is, you stay in a hotel. It could be the 4th floor, 15th floor, 23rd floor. 1, 2 in the morning, the fire alarm goes off. The first thing you think of is, oh my God, do I gotta get out of bed? Do I gotta put my clothes on? And do I gotta go outside? So you are already assessing what's going on, right? Because I'm sure some of you in this room have said, I'm not leaving. I'm exhausted. I gotta get my rest. I gotta get up early. I'm not leaving, okay? If there was an immediate danger to you, whether you saw fire or smoke, then that wouldn't even be a thought in your mind, right? You'd just get up and you'd go, whether you throw a towel on, bathrobe, whatever. You'd be out of that hotel room quickly. So I had the state fire marshal call me probably about 6 weeks ago and ask me, Derek, what are you telling people? And I've been telling people this for a little while, but I'm, kind of really trying to get my point across now is, if that fire alarm goes off in our schools, I am just simply asking people to assess the situation. Assess. If there's immediate danger, obviously we leave. I think the last child we lost in our schools during a fire was in 1971, somewhere in that range, right? So why not stop and assess and listen to what is going on? And I'm not telling you not to leave, because I know there will be somebody out there saying, well, the captain from the state police told us don't leave the room. That's not it. We're just asking you to assess that situation to leave. If you look at Parkland, he pulled the fire alarm to get kids out. Kids were able to identify, and teachers were able to identify what was going on at that particular time, and they locked themselves down into their classrooms. So, other things to be considered are bus safety, something I'm looking in quite frequently now because it's a huge vulnerability to us, is the safety of children in our buses, right? Our buses are not bulletproof, nor will they ever be, because we wouldn't be able to afford them. So how do we do the safety of the buses? We do a really good job in our school districts of sitting out when the kids come out of or come to our schools or leaving our schools, of having people outside. But what do we do when that bus is a half mile, a mile, and we all know there's a long line of those buses. So things we're looking at as well. Environmental safety, security, what's our geographical location? Proximity to the highways, factories, and railroads, neighborhood crime, and our climate. Some school districts have to be concerned about where their schools are. Inner city schools have to be concerned because there are crime that happens quite often near those schools on a daily basis. What are our climate? We all know that the southern part of the state's weather is a little different than the northern part of the state, right? So all these things we have to take into effect when we're doing our all hazard assessments. I know Sandy Hook Initiative is going to be here, so I'm not going to really get too much into this. They came up a fantastic initiative over the years. They talk about our school assessments, how it's such a valuable asset, and that we have to follow through and ensure that everyone's on the same page. We have to ensure that everyone in our schools is trained. We have to ensure that our teachers are properly trained, because when an event happens, who's going to have to take charge of the situation? And if our teachers can't take it and our administrators can't take charge of the situation, how well are we going to succeed? I could talk to you for hours. My biggest thing is we have to be prepared when this happens. The biggest thing I talk about is pre-plan, visualize, have situation awareness. If you are scared, you're at a high level where you can't think straight because you're extremely scared, and you don't have a plan, how well are you going to succeed? And these assessments will help you to succeed in that. So let's get a little bit into the assessments. I actually used Larry's Situate Middle and High School. So Situate did a fantastic job of their assessments, but if the police department, the fire department, and the emergency management and other people aren't aware of that plan, then how well are we going to do? Now, Larry's fortunate in the fact that we have state police headquarters right down the street. And we had an incident in Situate last year, and a lot of us were able to get there because at any given time there's probably 50 to 75 troopers, detectives, and whatnot working out of headquarters. So he's extremely fortunate. But we are very fortunate here in the state of Rhode Island because the average active shooter event is 4 to 6 minutes. We're fortunate that we're small and our police response is very, very quick in the state of Rhode Island. So we're fortunate with that. When you had the URI incident a few years back where we thought we had an active shooter event, then we would make a determination that it wasn't an event going on at that particular time. I personally actually had to call police departments and ask them to stop responding. That's good. That's really good. I'd rather have that than worrying about who's going to be there next, right? So our response is great in the state of Rhode Island, so we're fortunate for that. So we ask you to take aerial shots of your school. Designate those spots. Designate where your evacuation routes will be. Because it's important that if we have to evacuate our kids at some particular point, where are those safe areas going to be? And does the law enforcement know those safe areas? Because they should, and they have to, because that's where we need to get to right away. So let's say go to Situate. Situate responds, Coventry responds, Forster, Gloucester, all the area. They could say, hey, state police, we need you to go to this location because this is where our kids are going to be evacuated. So we ensure the safety of that as well. So we look at the grounds around our schools. We look at the entrances to our schools. Is there just one way to our school? Is there just one main driveway to our school? Things we have to think about. One thing we talk about that I always try to instill in school districts is, do we have a reunification location? What do I mean by that? If there's an event at one of your schools, we don't want the significant others, the parents of our children, of our teachers, coming to that school. Because if they do, how are we going to get there, meaning law enforcement? How is emergency medical personnel going to get there? So we ask that you have a reunification location, which could be a half mile, a mile, 2 miles away from the school. Larry had a great one. When we had an incident at Situate, he had it down in a field. Larry was about a quarter mile away or so. We were able to block the roads down. We didn't allow parents to get there. Obviously, parents want to get to their children. You know, you think of some of our schools, if all the parents come to those schools, then that creates a huge issue for all of us. Sandy Hook, there were SWAT officers, Connecticut State Police SWAT officers, that had to run 3/4 of a mile with 60 pounds of gear to get to the school because people were parking in the main driveway to that school. And I could go, you know, my worst fear, quite frankly, is the Province Place Mall on any given day during rush hour. How do we get there, right? And then think of your schools when kids are being let out during the day. Parents are there and stuff like that. So we want to keep parents away. Do we have areas where cars could drive into our schools? We had that many years ago in the Lincoln schools, right? We had someone drive into our schools. Can we put bollards and barriers around our schools to ensure that doesn't happen? Now, you're going to think that's a one-time incident that happening, or you're going to think, oh, what's really a big deal if someone drives into our schools? But I'm always trying to think the next step. I'm thinking that's a diversion. Someone drives into our school to divert all our attention to that one specific event where something else could happen. Much like you pull the fire alarm. That's a diversion, right? We're going to want to try to divert all the kids in one area and to get those kids out into the open hallway to harm. Now, unfortunately, a lot of our thoughts are, with a lot of school districts, is there's always going to be that one shooter. Well, I'm here to tell you this is something that's going to happen more and more and more. There's going to be more than one. If I knew a school district was immediately going to evacuate a school in the event of an active shooter, we'll say, then I would have one person go into the school shooting, and I would sit outside waiting for people to come out, right? So we have to always think of multiple issues. Are our grounds secure if we had to evacuate, or are they secure that not allowing to somebody to hide in a specific area to actually shoot people when they come outside, right? And I'm not going to go through everything here, but I'm just going to kind of touch upon different things. Exterior lighting. This time of year is not a huge concern because obviously it's brighter later in the night, which is nice. Think about your winter months when people are leaving the schools, teachers, whatnot. Are there dark areas around our schools? Those are danger areas. They're not just danger areas because somebody is walking out of our schools. It's danger areas because people could possibly hide things in those particular areas. Listen, these events, we say, evolve quickly, but not necessarily, we're not made aware. There is a definite planning that goes on to these events, right? Definite planning that goes on to events that take place. Think about at night when you have your local police drive around your school. And I know a majority of all police departments drive around our schools at night to ensure the security of our schools. If areas aren't well lit, it's making it much more difficult for law enforcement to ensure the safety of those areas, right? So that's always an important thing, something we kind of don't really look at too much, but extremely important that we ensure there's good lighting around our schools. So you'll see from this assessment that we're kind of hitting little things. And you can see yes, no, how many in the comments. We're looking for comments, quite frankly. We want comments. And these assessments about the little things that we can do, and I've said this before, what little things can we do to ensure the safety of our schools? And these are little things that I'm kind of hitting upon right now. Doors and windows. The main entrance of our buildings, our schools. Do we do a good job of containing individuals? Listen, all of our schools are built a long time ago, and they're aesthetically pleasing because we wanted to invite people into our schools. So what does all of our schools have? Glass doors, right? We know that in Newtown, Adam Lanzi shot through the glass doors to get into our schools. They did everything right. There are some products out there now that, I hear it quite often, the 3M product that we can put over our glass to slow down these individuals so you just can't shoot through them and walk through. It takes quite a bit of time to get through there with that. We understand this, that we are not going to get bulletproof glass in our schools. It's not going to happen, right? In fact, we don't even have bulletproof glass in all of our barracks in the state of Rhode Island. So you can actually walk and look, it's essentially big, thick plexiglass, really. We don't have the funding right now to do that. We have improved some of our barracks, but we have to do other means to plan, right? We have visitors into our school. Do we keep track of our visitors when they come into our school? They come in, they sign in. Do we know where they are at all given times? Have we trained our teachers to ensure that they are asking people who are walking around our schools just to confront them? Meaning, hey, could I help you? Something I can do for you? Can I lead you in the right direction? So we have to ensure our teachers are trained in that way. Are our exterior doors or outside of our buildings numbered? A side, B side, C side, D side. The reasoning for that, when you look at your school, you put a box over your school. The A side's the front, the left side is the B side, the rear of the school is the C side, and the right side of the school is the D side. And a lot of your schools have numbers or letters outside of those. You'll see a lot of workplaces that have this today, right? Why is that? Because if someone calls 911 and says that the intruder is on the northwest corner of the building, where's the northwest corner of the building? Do they know where the northwest corner of the building is? Do I know where the northwest corner of the building is? If you tell me that intruder's on the BC corner of the building, second floor, third floor, whatever it is, I know exactly where I need to go. So little things like that, once again, we can effectively protect the children in our schools. How about exterior door keys? Who has the master keys? Where are the master keys? Do we know? Do we know that when we fire a teacher, the teacher doesn't come back, do we have those keys? Or are those keys still out there? Some of us can have card access control, which is great. It's expensive. Not all of us can afford that. But if there are keys out there, that's something we should be concerned about as well. I've gone to many schools and a lot of businesses, and when I tell them, okay, where are your keys, they go, oh, I'm really not sure where they are. How about the gentleman you fired 3 weeks ago? Does he still have the keys? He does. Well, then he has full access to your building. Doors and windows, do they secure? Doors secure from the outside. All our school doors should be locked all the time. All of our school doors inside should be locked all the time. I am a huge proponent. I've said this numerous occasions, probably to thousands of teachers. I think the school door in the classroom should be locked all the time. All the time. And I use this as an example. When you go to the supermarket today, or whenever, CVS, tomorrow, and you go drop somebody off at the supermarket, CVS, and you're sitting in your car, and they run in to get something real quick. The first thing we probably do is we sit on our phone, because we're trying to kill time, we look on our phone, and so we're not seriously paying attention to anything but our phone. Much like when you drive home today, and the individual's in the high-speed lane going 55 miles an hour on their phone, because it's all about them, right? It's all about me.com, and they don't care about anyone else, because we're just focused on our phone. So you drop somebody off in the parking lot, they run in. Is your door locked or unlocked in your car? How many people, raise your hand, are going to tell me that you're going to leave your door unlocked when you're sitting there? Okay, a couple of people, okay? Not many, it's good. So you're on your phone, your door's unlocked. Somebody comes and tries to open your door. They can open your door, right? How much time do you have to make a decision on what to do? Not any time, really. Maybe a second. If your door is locked and someone tries to open your door in your car, how much time do you now have to make a decision what to do? You have a lot of time, right? You either call 911 or you may drive away or whatever you may do. But that gives you an opportunity to make a better decision on what you would do. Let's talk about our schools. If our schools doors are locked, then we are one step and the most important step ahead of the game to securing our students in the classroom, okay? If the event is taking place, and I'm not even going to say an active shooter. Let's say there's an intruder in our school. What do I mean by an intruder? Someone who's walking around our school who we're really not sure why they're in our schools. And it happens on occasion, okay? If the door is locked, then we're ahead of the game. If someone tries to open your door to your classroom, they can't get in because the door is locked. Now you have an active shooter in our schools, and that person is outside the hallway. Now we have to be focused on what we need to do in that classroom during a lockdown, but the door is locked. So that's the most important step already done, and it gives that teacher or those students more time to do what they need to do. I have gone around to different schools, and I have seen they've taken the noodles, like styrofoam noodles, they've cut those pieces out, and they put them over the latch of the door. So you go around as an administrator, and you try the door, it's locked. Try the handle, it's locked. But you can pull the door open because it's not secure. And they use other things like little Legos and the door jams and stuff to that, okay? And I've said this publicly, and I'll say it over and over and over again. During an active shooter event or a high-stress situation in our schools, that teacher will absolutely forget that that little piece of whatever is in that door and that door is not secured. Absolutely forget, because they want to cut corners. And we can't do that, right? So it's like me. I carry a firearm. If you know anything about firearms, we leave one in the chamber, meaning all I have to do is pull the trigger. If I don't leave one in the chamber and someone starts shooting at me, am I going to tell them to hold on 1 minute because I have to take my gun out and rack the slide and so I can engage that individual? Absolutely not. So you have to be prepared for that. So I truly feel that our doors in our classrooms should be locked all the time. And we shouldn't be cutting corners. And it's much like when we do our lockdown drills in our schools. A lot of school departments will ask me to come and view that, and I've actually seen teachers going through the motions. They'll shut the lights off and they'll continue to teach. What are we doing there? Why are we not practicing training the way, God forbid, something were to happen, right? Anyone here from the Cumberland School District? Okay, Cumberland. So Cumberland, a couple weeks ago, we did a live active shooter event in Cumberland. Hats off to them. It was during the April vacation. We came in. I worked very closely with Chief Desmaris from Cumberland Police Department and Captain Fay. And we did this last year, and they wanted to do it again this year. It was during April vacation. A lot of the teachers on their own time came in. We briefed them what we were going to do. We put them into classrooms, and we came in with an AR-15 M4 rifle with blank rounds, and we started shooting rounds in the hallway. Okay? And they went through a live event. Now, they were the teachers/students in their school, and they actually saw what would happen in the event. Now, it wasn't rapid fire like you would, but it was extremely loud, and there was teachers who were visibly shaking. But that's great, because they went through a realistic situation of, God forbid, something were to happen, and they went through that part, and then we actually sat down afterwards and briefed them all, and I gave a little presentation to them about school safety. I truly believe everyone should go through that, right, to ensure. Their doors were locked. Last year, it didn't work out too well for them because some of the teachers put door chucks underneath their doors, blocks underneath their doors to keep their doors open because their protocol is to leave their doors locked. Well, when we did the event in a small school and they came in, some of the teachers couldn't kick that block from underneath the door because they started panicking. So it was a great, valuable experience to them, and they were able to learn what they needed to do and to assure the safety of all of our students. Alarm systems, cameras, a lot of our schools have cameras, some do not. People ask me quite often, what about cameras in our schools? Is that a necessary component? It's a good component. It's a good component in the fact that there is an intruder in our schools. Law enforcement can view those cameras to see where that intruder is. But it's also a good thing to see if there's any planning going on of any event that may take place in our schools. Notification system is probably one of my top things that I think all schools, in short, should they have. Doors, locked doors, notification system to our schools. If we have an event happening in our schools, outside of our schools, how are we going to alert the faculty and staff in our schools that we have an event going on? We need to have a notification system through our schools, whether it's an intercom system, whether it's through our phones in our classrooms, whatever it may be. That's one of the big, people ask me quite often, what are the big things that schools need? And that is one of my big things, a notification throughout. I've gone to a lot of businesses and they've asked me about it. And they said, we don't have that. I said, well, check your phone system, because most phone systems today have a notification that you could dial into that. Radio systems, obviously 800 megahertz radio systems, very difficult to get, to acquire, only because they're expensive. But a lot of great things we could do is two-way radios that we can communicate with each other throughout the schools. If kids are outside during gym time or after-school events, there should be someone outside always with a radio to communicate. If there's an event happening in the school, we want to notify those people that we don't want the kids coming to our school, into our schools, right? So that's always an important component as well. Identification cards through our school. Do we wear identification badges? I've done a lot of assessments for a lot of our state buildings. I've gone in a suit in a lot of our state buildings and walked through our state buildings looking just like this, and many people have not questioned me who I am. I want people to confront me. I purposely didn't put a badge on. A lot of the state buildings don't have visitor badges and stuff to that nature, right? So we have to ensure that people who come into our schools are badged. And I'm also a proponent of actually have our teachers as well, right? What about, I know we work with our teachers everyday basis, but what if you have substitute teachers we maybe not familiar with at that particular time, right? So why not have identification badges all the time? More importantly, for the visitors in our school. And like I said earlier, do we know when those visitors leave our school? One thing I suggest is maybe you take their license, ask to hold their license at the front office. So they will, at some point, need their license, so they will come back, right? Most times they'll maybe forget, maybe they'll make a strong note of it because they know they need their license, or maybe shortly after they leave, they'll come back to get their license. Now you know who is throughout the building. You know when they actually have left your building. Monitoring, I talked briefly about that, of our buses, when they come in and out, in the morning, parking lots, when kids drive into the parking lot, in the different areas of our schools. Do we have a monitoring program, a system in place for our schools? Do we sit down as a safety team quite often and review these? Do we have a threat assessment team, meaning we have an individual we are concerned about in our school? Could be a student, could be a parent that we're concerned about. Do we have a threat assessment team that will sit down as a group, meet maybe weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, to actually discuss the concerns we have with that particular individual? So what I look for, and this is actually recommendations of a school in our, it's actually a private school here in Rhode Island. This was done a couple of years ago. But I highly recommend that there be recommendations of how we can improve our schools. Now I get it. I've said this a few times already. Our recommendations is not about going, the school districts going to you folks, school committees, and saying, hey, listen, I need $200,000 to do this. It's looking at every year doing the little things. So maybe you can put some funding ahead of this year we'll do this, next year we can do this, another year we can do this, or little things that we can do right now that doesn't really cost much money at all. So these are just some of the recommendations, and I'm not going to go over them all, but things I've talked about as I've gone through this brief presentation here today. Install cameras in our stairwells, establish secure access points throughout the floors. Something we forget about all the time. Periodically change the combination and push combination locks throughout our school. We have, a lot of schools will have push combinations to get in. When's the last time those were changed? How often does that, you don't think the kids know what that is if they have to get through with somebody else, right? And there's just a whole bunch of other things I talked about, confronting visitors, strangers, emergency procedures guide, pictures of our schools, different locations of our schools, I want to open it up, hopefully, to some questions. That is my contact number and email address. That is the best way to get in touch with me is through my email. Just email me, give me a little bit of time. Quite often I probably get about quite a few emails a week from different individuals asking for assistance. I will do whatever I can to assist you. Whatever time of day, I'll do that.